This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, live once again with you guys here on this Thursday. Can't believe this week has flown by the way it has. Actually, I can totally believe that because it is the transfer portal and time just does not exist in this world that we live in with the transfer portal. It just goes by as quickly as you guys might think it does. For me, which is every single day waking up wondering who's going in, who's leaving, and who's coming into town for SMU. And that's why we have you guys covered. I don't want to say 24/7. We haven't gotten around to staffing the site around the clock 24/7, 365 days a year, but we're working towards that because that is what the transfer portal feels like. And that's what our subscribers who have jumped on board with us for 50% off your annual subscription have gotten so far in the transfer portal time that we've had this year. So lots to get to on the pod today. Of course, we'll talk about additions. We'll talk about departures. We'll talk about maybe what's next. I think I might put that together for the guys on the site in a little reset of the board. Got to find a way to work out. And it's a shame that Horn Legend doesn't make workout gear or whatever, but I've got to get my mind off the portal a little bit. But I can tell you what, Horn Legend has hooked it up. Another great polo came in for me just this week. And this is one that has been sold out a lot. I haven't been able to get my hands on it, but it's for those of you SMU fans out there, this is just the very basic kind of SMU script. It's just beautifully done by our friends at Horn Legend. And of course, you get free shipping on your Horn Legend orders when you use code PONY. You put that in and make sure you use that drop-down menu to share with Horn Legend when you buy your gear that you found out about it when it says, how did you hear from us? How did you hear about us? That's on the Pony Express. Make sure you guys put that in there for me and do me a big favor there. So lots to talk about on the pod. Appreciate all of you guys filtering in once again on Twitter and on YouTube, especially our YouTube show has really grown a bunch during this crazy transfer portal time that we're living in. So we appreciate all of you guys who are here with us and in the chat and chiming in. We had a really packed show on Monday. We'll take questions as they come in, but I do have a lot to talk about. So I might not be as chatty with the chat as much as I have been in the past today, because SMU since Monday when we talked, they had transfers in from Yannick Smith, the wide receiver from East Carolina, and they had one from Christian Davis, defensive lineman from Louisiana Tech. Now, fast forward, it's Thursday. You guys have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new additions in the transfer portal to talk about on this show. We've got a lot to get to on that front, and we'll talk about the departures. A lot of context, I feel like, around that in today's day and age of the transfer portal, we're all still learning about, and we're all still trying to understand how quickly this thing moves, not only from the visit perspective, from the landing a commitment and a signature and agreeing to a deal perspective. That stuff's the easy piece. But when you see the departures and sometimes how they happen, that is the one that I think a lot of people, including reporters, are still wrapping their heads around in a sense, because man, I look up and down the On3 network. And if you're not on the On3 Rivals network, please jump on. Again, we're doing a 50% off special. You can scan the QR code that I'm throwing up there in the corner of the screen right now and join us at ontheponyexpress.com. And you get access to all the sites around the network. And of course, you could post with us on ontheponyexpress.com. But you see a lot of articles saying, well, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. They are trying to make sure that the guys on the roster are taken care of. But, oh, by the way, so-and-so team and so-and-so team is coming after him. And, you know, this lower level Power 4 school wants this guy to play a ton for them. So maybe that guy's going to go in the portal. And these are blue blood programs talking a lot about that. I look at the Texas site right now for us, and it is borderline on fire. And I think SMU is, sitting on the precipice of having a little bit of another run here going into this weekend. I think tight end could be addressed. I think running back could be addressed. A couple other needs could really be addressed. Edge, those things could still happen. And then I go over to the Texas site, and I should say, and I think sometimes our side on the SMU side of things is sitting there going like, well, what's going on? What's the plan? Or what's next? Or what's this? Man, the Texas site has to be in, I don't want to say shambles, but they add Rayleigh Brown from Arizona State, really terrific running back. But they're doing that because Louisville was able to retain Isaac Brown. That was kind of the hot rumor that Texas was going to get Isaac Brown from Louisville. And then last night, and we're, by the way, minor announcement, but Hayden Howerton and myself are really going to rebuild our membership channel on the YouTube side of things, so which we're thrilled about. It's going to help Hayden produce more content. It's going to help compensate him and his time for what he does in the film room. And we're also going to be able to drop some like member only, kind of more freely talked about podcasts on there without commercials. But when you look at the potential portal entries, and we can kind of talk in that space about it, but one of them in particular that was highly talked about was Elijah Bo Barnes from Dallas, who was reportedly going to enter the portal yesterday. Well, we look up and he's not entered just yet, and Texas is fighting to keep him. But man, that board is melting down about it because he's a former 5-star or former top 50 player. I forget if he was a 5-star. He was on 3 5-star. So you get a former 5-star who's entering the portal, leaving your program, and at the same time, you're having that success of getting Rayleigh Brown, and you've been, a pretty good program as far as getting some key pieces like Michael Masunas, the tight end from Michigan State, and Bo Masco, a defensive back from Rutgers. So you've had success, but then you're seeing today Jamie French leaves, Zena Umazolu, another highly touted former DFW area defensive end. You're seeing some of these major pieces from past recruiting classes leave Texas and opt to go into the portal. And meanwhile, SMU, and we'll talk about this in departures, meanwhile, SMU has only really seen Marky and Accor leave from, I would say, its core future pieces of the puzzle for them so far as we're sitting here recording kind of right now. And I mean that from a positional standpoint. I think Sam Keltner was a core piece kind of going forward, but Marky and Accor is that first one where you were like, oh, okay, all right. I don't know if that one went to plan. We'll get to departures. And I know I'm rambling. We're about 8.5 minutes in now. But I will say, before we get fully on track here, we are watching college football look at this portal cycle, and you're seeing a balance of good and bad across the country with some of this. Even I've seen, a lot of people like to talk about Texas Tech, and they have done an outstanding job. Once again, they are on a heater, but they are also losing some of those depth pieces that are getting recruited over. Guys who have had tackles for loss, guys who have had starting safety for their 2024 season. So it is not all perfect, and everyone is not being retained everywhere. And so there's a lot of different levels to all of this. And you have to really look and you, more than ever, I would encourage you to be on the site. That's biased, but I think we do provide you guys a really good piece to your day as far as figuring out how your Mustangs are doing and where their roster stands. And I do need to do a scholarship distribution story as well today, but you have to look at the additions that you're bringing in, and you have to look at your departures and say, okay, first of all, let's start there. How is the program that I follow faring in that regard? Do I feel good about X, Y, Z? And then you try to match it to the transfers that are coming in, and then build that all together with what has been graduated and what is returning for your roster. And that is a hard thing to do all at once and provide context and really kind of rationalize where your roster is. And that's something that I think SMU is sitting here as we record this on this Thursday afternoon with you guys in the chat. sitting there saying, all right, we're really close to going on a run that would make everybody feel a whole lot better after making our little mini run this week on guys that have made people feel better. SMU this weekend has an opportunity to make that next run to that next level and kind of get their portal class to a point where you're like, okay, great, it's done, quote unquote. Let's figure out some other depth pieces here that might make sense and acquiring talent and all those things. So 10 minutes in, quite the intro. But Jerry Morphew, good to see you again. Saw you this morning on All Access AM. Thanks for joining us. Unoriginal channel name. Excited for this and for the possible tidbits later. You're the best. Thank you. Appreciate that. T King 701. What up, Billy? What up? I'll try to refrain from doing that. I don't think everybody loved the "What up, Billy" from me, but it's nice to read that. I appreciate you being here. Before we get into the breakdown of the additions, of course, we've got to remind you guys about our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is an SMU-owned commercial services company right here in DFW, servicing DFW as well as Oklahoma, as well as Arkansas. AJ Crow, a proud SMU alum, and his family have taken over this business and just run with it and created an incredible breadth of services for your business, whether it's commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control. They also do concrete and fence repair, as well as those Christmas lights that need to come down now if you want. Those can be taken down by them. Parking lot services, all of those different things AJ Crow and OPW Solutions can provide for you. 214-444-2305. We appreciate them for sponsoring us at ontheponyexpress.com as well. You guys, the additions that SMU has brought in, I really like the pieces as a whole. And when I try to dive into transfer portal gets for SMU and looking at what this team needed, they mission accomplished at wide receiver. You have so much young wide receiver talent. It's incredible. Like that group that is coming back, I think top to bottom is one of the best that I've seen. Man, and I stress top to bottom that I've seen in a long time, and that is exciting. That is something that SMU fans should be really excited about with the addition of Yannick Smith. Well, we've talked about him. You add Christian Davis, big nose tackle, should be somebody with 2 years that you can count on for these next 2 years. He's played a good bit of football now. Then when you look at what SMU got into on that Tuesday, they were able to go on this run that really changed the trajectory of this class. And now SMU has a lot of needs across the roster. There's no question about it. And they sit here right now with 7 commitments from the transfer portal. And who knows, as we're recording this, you guys might see me play a bunch of ad videos or something for you that we might have to do in case a commitment rolls in, a decision comes down, because we're tracking some of that still. But when it comes to the guys that SMU has added, they went out and they got on January 6th, they got Caden Marshall from Bowling Green. Now, here's the context on Caden Marshall. Caden Marshall is just finished up his second year in college football. He redshirted in 2024 at Tennessee State before transferring to Bowling Green. When he got to Bowling Green, he ended up playing in 8 games, starting 6 of those as a redshirt freshman, 38 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. And in his first career start at Louisville, 8 tackles and a sack. Really impressive stuff from him. High upside guy that they like. And I talked with Caden. We'll have an interview up later this week when I get a chance to write it. But he has 3 years of eligibility remaining. When you look at this linebacker room for SMU, they lost out of this year's class. They lost Zakai Barker, who was going to be a senior. They lost Justin Medlock, who was going to be a senior. And so that left Alexander Kilgore and Brandon Maiazono walking in for that final year, right? Then you lose Kyle Firm, who would have had 1 year left in 2027 alongside Brandon Booker. And SMU said, okay, we have to find a way to fix this room's kind of trajectory long-term, because you did not want to be sitting there in 2026, after that season, preparing for the 2027 season, saying, okay, we like the guys we've signed and all of that. They're coming up through the ranks. We need to find out how to replace 4 linebackers that are going to play a ton. And you'd only have one of those 5 overall that would have played a ton that would have been returning. That would have been crazy, right? So they go out and get Caden Marshall, who now bridges that gap from Alexander Kilgore and Brandon Maiazono to Brandon Booker to Caden Marshall to Isaiah Young and Kenneth Goodwin now. And they'll go out and add more. I mean, they will add more to this linebacker room. I have no doubt. They have somebody who was just on campus this week as well, Omar Diamande, who they're recruiting out of UConn, a really talented linebacker for the Huskies. That was a starter. They were recruiting JoJo Hayden, who did commit to Purdue. He was going to visit later on this week. But we're watching Bo Barnes. Does he go in to the transfer portal? If he does, SMU can then really get things rolling for this linebacker room. And there you go. There you have it. I believe Bo Barnes is in the portal at least. So Texas is working to get him back. But what we're showing on our end right now, at least in the portal, is Bo Barnes in the portal. So we'll double check on that. We'll confirm on that. But that is what our site is listing him as. I'll send a text right now to confirm. But with that being the case, at least as of right now, you have somebody who that is kind of one of the top of the board guys. Texting our friend Pete Nakos right now to double check that, because he's listed as entered on January 7th. So something to keep an eye on there as Texas works to retain Bo Barnes, and we'll see how all of that goes. But that leaves the linebacker room now needing yes, there he is, Pete Nakos, the GOAT, coming right through. Shout out, Pete. He is in the portal. Elijah Barnes is not only just reportedly expected to enter the portal, he is in the portal. So SMU can recruit him, can push for him, can do all those things, and openly talk with their side of things. So they can go after him and work to get him on campus for a visit. Would be huge. So, I think when you look at the linebacker room, if that was going to be the guy that you would then push for to replace Markian Akor, who is left, you're sitting there being like, absolutely. Former 5-star from Dallas, who actually played in the bowl game, had a good bit of success for Texas in that bowl game. You'd be sitting there, sitting pretty. So that addresses Markian Akor as well on that front with his departure. He did leave SMU. It came right after the Caden Marshall news came down. I was actually recording with our friend Bill Armstrong, Walking Strong podcast, and that one came across my phone as we were recording. And it's a shame, because I thought Markian Akor was, I thought he was going to be Kobe Wilson. Just give him a couple minutes, a minute or two to get into the rotation, and he really had that upside to him. But if SMU can replace him with Bo Barnes, not only do they bring in somebody who's of the same class as him from a year perspective, they upgrade as far as pure talent and versatility. Bo Barnes can get after the passer. He can play in the middle. He's got a bigger body. He's got more length. I think he was an accomplished hurdler or something like that in high school too. So really good stuff there now that he is officially in the portal. But they do need to add another linebacker with Caden Marshall, because Caden told me, he said, my job is to come in and play, but my job is most importantly to develop this year so I can start next year. He's coming in to push for time. He's coming in to play on special teams right away. He's coming in to learn the system and get bigger, faster, stronger. And his goal is to start next year. So we will see how SMU does getting on a Bo Barnes and seeing how all of that plays out. But as of right now, they are happy with Caden Marshall being a piece for the future for them, and we'll see what else they can bring in. Quick glance to the chat here. Parker, this morning, you've mentioned looking for a tight end in the portal. Of the guys on the roster currently, who would start? I guess who would start right now if they didn't touch it? It would be Trip Reardon, and Adam Moore did depart for the transfer portal. So that is one that is gone as well. He entered the transfer portal on Monday afternoon. Maybe we talked about Adam Moore leaving on the Monday pod. I can't remember. But Trip Reardon would start, and I would say some combination of Andre Nickerson and Zach Turner. I mean, truthfully, and that's just because I haven't seen Miles Uter ever play in person. Like I have not seen it. I've seen Zach Turner, and I've seen a whole bunch of Andre Nickerson as well. And it's fascinating to watch those two. Miles Uter, though, has like this kind of long athletic body. Kind of reminds me of like a Grant Calcaterra in a sense. So I'd be interested to see how he does. But I mean, your starter, as far as right now, is Trip Reardon. Parker Ritchie, people have jokes about Rodgers being the kicker. Is there any chance of that? Or is SMU going to have to get a new kicker in the portal? They're going to have to get a new kicker in the portal. I love Colin. I don't know what happened. He was not very good in fall camp and almost lost his job then. And then, the season played out the way it did. But SMU working on it in a big way to get a kicker into the fold. Continuing on with the transfers in, SMU was not done there. It was a big Tuesday for the Mustangs as they got Jarvis Lee into the mix as well. This is the big one, in my opinion. The biggest land of this transfer portal class is Jarvis Lee, the USF nickelback who was just awesome for the Bulls this year. Had sacks, had tackles for loss, stole the football away, just all sorts of good stuff coming out of his season this year. And he has 1 year of eligibility remaining, and SMU beat out Auburn, Florida State, Oregon, and others for him. He had 55 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, a career high 6 tackles that came against Florida, and he grabbed a pick against Miami. And just hearing some interviews of him, absolute dog for this secondary and Ricky Huntley. He'll be your starter at nickel, and Lamadrick Spencer can play there. One of those guys can maybe move outside at times, but that is something that SMU needed to kind of fix, and that fixes so much of this defense in the secondary is having a nickel like a CJ Sanders that was so good in 2024. Yeah, 2024. And yes, Schnickel, losing Sam Keltner sucks. Like, we'll talk about him. He'll probably be the guy we talk about the most, honestly, in the departures. But it sucks, and SMU has to go out and get a proven kicker. I bet you they do in the end. Jimmy Wyrick is the other defensive back that they did add. I'll quickly move to him. He was on Wednesday that they just announced his signing, and he is an all-conference defensive back from UTSA. He is a former Dallas South Oak Cliff Bear. He is somebody that can kind of play that free safety role, move around a little bit. One source compared him to Jonathan McGill, and guess what? He's a former Stanford Cardinal who Jonathan McGill has been a part of helping get to SMU. And so in 2025, he was just awesome for UTSA. He was second on the team in tackles with 62, 42 of which were solo tackles. That's really, really impressive stuff. Had a pair of fumble recoveries and forced one, had a half tackle for loss. So really, really productive tackler, very good in space. He's just going to be really steady and cerebral back there, which will be important with his experience playing next to a first-time full-time starter in Tyron Polley, who we love. So, when you look at Jimmy Wyrick, third-team all AAC, and he should have 2 years of eligibility remaining due to an injury that he sustained earlier in his career. He'll have to apply for that, but as of right now, SMU sitting there, watching him as a 1 year guy, just, as far as roster planning and things like that goes, but they should have him for a second year too, which is also a good thing and intriguing. When you look at the day before that on Tuesday, they did get another USF Bull, Ira Singleton as well. This is your replacement for DJ Warner. If you're an SMU fan and you were wondering, man, what happened to DJ Warner? That's surprising. That was a while ago. That was before the bowl game. But yes, surprising in a sense, but also he never took advantage. You think about one of the key plays in that TCU game. I think it was the third down or fourth down by Josh Hoover, where DJ Warner has him dead to rights and then inexplicably loses contain, and Josh Hoover gets out. And I think DJ might have still hit him, but he completes a pass. I think that was a drop off that I think maybe even snuck into the end zone, or it was a conversion nonetheless on a long third and long, fourth and long situation. And that right there was the moment I think that was 4 games in. I think that was the moment DJ Warner kind of lost some people on, the SMU staff. He has elite get off, elite speed, elite traits, and I just don't think he ever put it all in there in the tank to go and accomplish all the things that he could. And so when he said, hey, I'm in a portal, SMU was like, fine. Guess what? They go out and get somebody who's come into college football at USF, which is a proud program that got a lot better under Alex Golish. And he played right away as a true freshman, and he played as a full-time starter this year. He was among the best in terms of pressures in the American. He had 29 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and a forced fumble. Him being the developmental defensive end, along with Montre Harris and Hudson Woods coming in as young guys. You got Jalen Shivers back, David Chukwumeka and Tavion Atkinson come in from JUCO ranks. There's a lot to like about how deep the defensive end room is suddenly for SMU. And that's even before they get or could get Tyler Thompson, the UNC defensive end, into the boat. But of course, one that is going to give a lot of SMU fans a lot of, let's say, just relief at night and ability to sleep at night. Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, the Kansas State defensive tackle, committed and signed with the Mustangs, 6'6", 305 pounds. He is an absolute freak as far as how he looks physically. And man, Calvin Thibodeau is just absolutely cooking when it comes to what he's bringing in for this defensive tackle room. When you look at Christian Davis, a big plug who was kind of came up out of nowhere. And then you add in Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, who's been a starter at Kansas State. He had 17 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. Very good as far as pressures go. And collapsing the pocket. Was supposed to go to Penn State. Fresh off a Nebraska official visit. A couple other programs were really, really wanting him. And SMU locks him down on his visit, and he doesn't leave. That is excellent stuff. And he's supposed to have 1 year of eligibility remaining. SMU needed this one. This is perfect to pair with Jonathan Jefferson at the defensive tackle spots. Whether you want to call it nose, whether you want to call it defensive tackle, that's huge. Then you have Christian Davis as a guy with another 2 years there. And then you have Kevin Allen and William Spencer, Woo Spencer, back behind them. You have Tyrone Winslow, you have Keith Doty and Dakota Dixon. And I think with some of the situational things that SMU couldn't do, and oh, by the way, I completely forgot about Akeel Washington at defensive end, and maybe Trey Wilson if he wants to stick around. This defensive end room and the amount of fun that they can have on third downs, third and long, which we know SMU struggled mightily at third and longs, which is just wild. Think about a lineup like this. Akeel Washington was supposed to be the best pure pass rusher. Again, pure pass rusher for SMU in fall camp. And he's lost for the entire year. He's back. Let's say they get him, Tyler Thompson out there. If they get him, then you add in a Tavion Atkinson, who they love. They think he can play inside like a Elijah Roberts. And then you have somebody like a Kevin Allen or a Malcolm Alcorn Crowder in there. You have so many different pieces now to play with. That is what SMU was missing overall when it came to transfers. So, or when it was missing when it came to defensive line and pressure. So, going to be really interesting to watch that unfold. Question for Parker Ritchie: is Yannick the final piece for the wide receiver room, or will they pursue another? There are 8 more days for the transfer portal. And right now, I would say he's the final piece unless they lose a piece. So that's the hard part with that. But that's why they stay in contact. That's why they keep guys warm. That's why they stay in touch with agents. That's why they can get guys into the portal kind of last minute. It's a wild, wild world. It's why I probably look exhausted at times. When you get tired, you got to think about efficiency in your life. How can I save a little bit of energy? Well, one way is by flying with our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com. Reach out to them today to get a discount on a round trip flight with our friends at StatusJet. When you mention On the Pony Express, David Henry and his team will take good care of you over there at StatusJet. And of course, also want to remind you guys about our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. Head up 75 to McKinney and visit any of their 4 dealerships, Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi, and mention On the Pony Express for employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles today.
At Thomas Auto Group, the Thomas Promise includes the low price promise,
the pre-owned promise,
and the 72-hour exchange promise.
And finally, the 100% customer satisfaction promise. So shop Thomas Auto Group today, home of the Thomas Promise.
All right, we do need to get to departures from the roster, but before we do that, you've probably already talked about this at length, but how's the running back room looking like it's going to shake out through the portal if any moves at all? Schnickel, we were about to talk about that. You have, as far as departures go, here are the departures. And I think this number is right. Might be a total. This might be a total number. Oh, yeah. Okay. So 14 transfers out. A couple of them are guys that have not been with the program for a minute, like Omari Abor is in the portal. Colin Rogers left in the season. But the rest of them, here they are. Kicker Sam Keltner, linebacker Kyle Firm, defensive end Billy Walton, defensive lineman Blake Burris, offensive lineman Paris Patterson, linebacker Mark Ian Akor, tight end Adam Moore, running back Chris Johnson, defensive back Kyron Chambers, linebacker Zakai Barker, defensive end DJ Warner, offensive lineman King Large. Okay. I'm going to try to sum up some of these really quickly and then get to the ones that probably need a little bit more context. I love King Large. We talked about him when he went in already a few podcasts ago. He left before the bowl game. Just a guy that I don't think was going to break through the starting lineup. I see he's going on a San Diego State and Missouri State visit. So then you get DJ Warner, we talked about earlier in the pod. Omari Abor didn't play football this year. Zakai Barker is, I think, the end. He got hurt right early in the season, and Elijah Pratt as well. I need to get him added. Safety Elijah Pratt left, and Elijah Pratt kind of the same thing with King Large, just wasn't going to play. But need to update his profile. But you have some of these guys that were just getting recruited over and just weren't going to play. First and foremost, I mean that's that's just business of college football. That's been the business of college football for a long, long time. And Elijah Pratt was one of those guys who redshirted this year and will get an opportunity elsewhere to play at a lower level in all likelihood. It wouldn't shock me if he ended up at like a UNT or somewhere like that. Maybe he's even landed somewhere already. Hopefully he has. When you look at the group that I think could have played and could have had a role, Zakai Barker is somebody that didn't benefit at all when he got hurt, and he got hurt to kick off this season. And Brandon Booker and Brandon Maiazono just took the bull by the horns and just ran with it, and they were so good. And when Zakai Barker came back, he just wasn't getting as many snaps. So he's got 1 year left. It sucks. Zakai is an awesome dude and has been on our shows, been at our events. So wish him the best, but he's just going to go somewhere and play. And I would say trading directly right there, Cade Marshall for Zakai Barker and or Justin Medlock is a pretty good deal. So I think that's, it's just kind of what you trade and what you give up at times to get somebody who balances out the roster, who balances out the talent level for future classes. That's kind of the line you have to walk for these programs. And yes, SMU Mustangs 46. We'll get to the running back room. And Harrison Williams is a walk-on offer, so he would be somebody that would just come to school at SMU. But appreciate you being in the chat there. When you look at some of these guys that are in, that's in large part what it's all about, in a sense. Kyron Chambers, kind of the same way. You look at what SMU's added now with Jarvis Lee, Lamadrick Spencer being healthy, and also having Jaden Milner-Jones back. And Jaden can kind of play a couple different spots. Kyron Chambers, going into a final year, he's going to drop down and go look to play somewhere. I think it wouldn't shock me if he ended up at Oklahoma State. It wouldn't shock me if he went to North Texas. There's a bunch of different options, I think, for him. And a lot of teams would be lucky to have him because athletically he's pretty nice. Adam Moore, tight end, just never put it together. I just never put it together. For as freakishly athletic as he is, that one hurts. Would have liked to have seen that one come together for him. Marquis and Icor, we talked about him earlier. We talked about Colin Rogers. Paris Patterson has played like a handful of games in college football. Blake Burris dropping down and committed to Florida Atlantic. He's going to go get to play. He should be a 2-deep guy for FAU there and a decent one too. So congrats to him. Billy Walton, he gets to go be a veteran leader for an Oklahoma State team that needs some talent. And SMU's defensive end room, man, the guys I listed off, I mean, would Billy Walton be the 4th-string guy here? Maybe. So after a couple of years of being at home, he's going to go somewhere else to Oklahoma State and go play. Kyle Firm committed to Liberty, so he's headed over there. He had some health issues, and then the depth at linebacker was the depth at linebacker. So let's hone in on a couple here. These are the hot button ones, okay? Chris Johnson Jr., let's start off there. He enters the portal and is off to visit UCF, is off to visit FSU, or off to visit USF as well, I believe. He came into SMU and was just this lightning fast running back who hadn't seen many opportunities at Miami. And I think he leaves SMU being somebody that has put together more tape that is, something to be proud of, but it was most certainly boom or bust. And I think there just wasn't that trust with Chris Johnson Jr. in there at times to be that dude for SMU. You'd see him break a big run and then he would kind of get caught and be timid and then be tackled. And it'd be a no gain or maybe even, at times a negative gain. And I think those are some of the things that he battled all year as far as getting into the rotation. But I think he would be electric at a USF. I really do. I mean, I think that's a perfect spot for him. It wouldn't shock me if he went to USF and was a 1,000-yard back. SMU is looking at the running back room and they're saying, okay, we lose TJ Harden and we bring in Eddie Kelly and Christian Rhodes, 2 4-stars who we like body type wise. And if you think about Eddie Kelly and you think about Christian Rhodes and compare them to Jermico Green, you've got to like the odds to get either one of those guys on the field as much as Jermico Green saw the field this year. Okay. Then you move Jermico Green up into a snap count role with Derek McFall maybe playing backup slot to Ymir Knight, playing that Roderick Daniels type of role that SMU loves. And all of a sudden, you need to replace TJ Harden from a veteran running back perspective. But you've also got such young talent that you should feel good about. And to go get a really good veteran running back, there might not be as much rev share there for a guy like a Chris Johnson Jr. And that's where it is like the NFL. You're renegotiating your contract. You're renegotiating your contract every year. It's exhausting for both sides. And I think Chris Johnson Jr. probably would have liked to have stayed, but he also didn't probably like being recruited over and seeing maybe some money go out the door to another avenue. So he ends up going in the portal. And because of his speed, he's going to be a hot button guy. But if SMU is recruiting the running back room as well as it looks like it is, Jermico Green should be a breakout star next year. Derek McFall could find a role and be a little bit better. You get a veteran running back in there and you're feeling pretty good about it because you've got 3 of 5 offensive linemen back off the starting squad. And then you have a group on the left side that you feel good about as far as a young player perspective, and they've got to make some moves and make some things roll in the run game. Those are all things that are happening. Those are all things that are being considered when you're looking at what to do with this running back room. And these are the hard conversations that they have to have. So it's going to be fascinating to see where he lands and see which running back hungry team would grab him. But wish him the best. He's a good dude. Really, really like Chris Johnson. And I think if he would have bought in just a smidge more and just almost had a little bit more fearlessness, I think he really would have seen his upside kind of explode in this offense, but it just wasn't there yet. And with Kevin Jennings being in his final year, I don't know if SMU is willing to wait around on that. So we'll see. When I look at Sam Keltner, to close this one out, Sam has a lot of upside as a kicker. You see some of the kicks, they could be good from 60. They could really have that leg that you're like, oh, wow, he's going to be a weapon. The performance at times, he missed some that he would want back. And that a college kicker, the expectation at a high level is to make. And he wasn't a true freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. He got his feet wet right away this year, in a sense, coming in for Colin Rogers early on in the year. And he made some big kicks at Clemson, made some big kicks for Miami against Miami. And at the same time, I don't think SMU was there yet to go all in on Sam Keltner in the sense of, all right, we want you to be our scholarship kicker. We want to give you a little bit of rev share and do all those things. And that is the hard part with kicker in college football. It really is. That is sometimes colleges want to have 3 or 4 on the roster and see which one rises to the top. And, I would say, college kickers are college kickers, man. I mean, they could be all over the place. Sam Keltner has a bright future. I think it's a shame that he's not going to be on this roster next year and he's going to Oklahoma State. I understand a little bit SMU not wanting to be like, hey, why don't you stop doing that and just like kind of stay? I just don't think, as much as publicly Rhett Lashlee is always going to back his guys. He's always going to do that. He's always going to talk them up until he has to make a change, which he did. Colin Rogers, Sam Keltner, Preston Stone, Kevin Jennings, and he's still going to talk them up even after the fact. But behind closed doors, you don't always have to sit there and say, oh, well, you're our guy and you're our this and you're our that and give everything. And I don't think Sam wanted much at all. But SMU wasn't willing to say, I think, hey, like, here it is. Here's our backing of you in such a way that made him feel all that good. I think Sam felt like he would have had to earn it all over again. And I don't know. There's something to that. There's something to the long snapper having to do that. Something having to do, maybe the punter. There is a freshman kicker coming in, and he ends up transferring, and he's going to a spot that's going to give him a little bit to, be their guy. And so it's just kind of the weird day and age of college football. And if those two are the main guys that SMU loses off of this team, you're sitting there saying, okay, I can deal with that. I mean, I think most people would say that. And that's the hard part about this, though, is it really makes it difficult to have those conversations and, all of that. It's just added awkwardness to it all, because you can't sign multi-year contracts that mean anything. Guarantees, looking at you, DeMond Williams, don't mean anything. And that's not to say that Sam and Chris Johnson Jr. are making bad decisions for themselves. I don't know. I think Chris Johnson's was a little bit more of, hey, we're going to go get somebody else. Writing's on the wall, and he leaves. Sam, it just seems like, hey, not enough love shown his way for him coming in and also making some big kicks and also kicking it out of the back of the end zone most of the time. And those things just didn't come together perfectly. And so, you know what? In today's day and age of free agency, it's going on and moving on. So it's a hard thing to, try to figure that out. So we'll see how it goes. But I think when you look at SMU and you look at the direction of the portal, it's a different cycle than it's been the last couple of years in a way, even though we dealt with this on the defensive line last year, where we watched it be kind of a slow build. And now here we are 6 days after the portal opened, and people are wondering, hey, where's it at? We'll find out over the course of this weekend, and we'll find out at ontheponyexpress.com. And I tell you what, we'll close out with this. Our friends at Socorro Tequila are going to have to help us out with this one, because Socorro Tequila, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blend of agave yeast and water. Our friends at Socorro can help us out with the transfer portal. Trust me, you need a little bit of Socorro in your life. And when you go to socorrotequila.com, order 3 bottles or more and get free shipping on that. So check out our friends at Socorro Tequila and also Los Charros Tex-Mex Smokehouse on Hillcrest. Make sure you visit there, the Graduate Hotel. Pull up, throw your keys to the valet, have a great meal at our friends, with our friends at Los Charros Tex-Mex Smokehouse, and tell them On the Pony Express sent you. So hope everyone enjoyed another live edition of some Portal Talk. We'll probably do this again on Friday if we've got some news, but if not, we'll get around to kind of wrapping up a whole week of SMU news and get back with you guys on Friday before a huge matchup between SMU and Duke on Saturday in basketball. We'll talk some hoops tomorrow. I'll see you guys then. Thank you so much. Hit the subscribe button to the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on 3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.